Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to Forevercraft. And today, I want to answer the question I've been getting a lot lately. What should I build in my Minecraft world? And well, I've got some ideas. Whenever I'm thinking about what I should build in my Minecraft world next, I always try to break it down into three distinct categories. The first one probably being the easiest and a thing that you wouldn't even necessarily really have to think that hard about, unless you want to spice it up a little bit, is utility. The most obvious thing that you need to build in your world are farms and other utility type builds. So here, we needed lava, and to do that, we made a nice little simple cauldron lava farm. The need that we had was we needed a reliable, renewable fuel source. I don't like mining coal, and if I do, I want to use that for torches. Smelting down trees for charcoal is a pain. The lava, that's infinite and renewable. And if you're going to build something like this, why not, throw some tough blocks in there, give it a little bit of shape, add a little bit of variety, and all of a sudden you've got a cool little build in your world. No, most of my farms are not beautiful or aesthetic or really that interesting to look at, but if you just put a little bit of extra effort into them, at least it's worth looking at when you walk by and not a big ugly eyesore in your world. Next stop for utility is everyone needs an iron farm. And well, I like to build my iron farms a little bit different. I like to try to incorporate them into the world and wherever they're being built. So for this area, we were going for a very mossy stone kind of like earthy look. So our iron farm is a big old boulder. Now outside of like iron farms or lava farms and things like that, there's a few more builds that I would categorize as utility. A nether portal build. Always a classic mainstay in any world, but it's just so much fun to really spruce up your portal. Sure, this thing functions the same as any other, but if you can theme it after your world, it just adds a little bit more life. Some more utility stuff you might consider building is an ice path highway. Now this one hasn't been decorated yet, so it's not the most pretty build in the world, but it is a lot of fun to use. And being able to travel quickly between parts of your world, sure, it's a little bit of work up front to mine the ice and dig the tunnels, but having this quick access to all your different builds, it just really makes your world a lot more fun to navigate. So I highly recommend building some transportation. And even if you're not going to do an ice boat highway in the nether, build some paths, build some like connectivity tissue between your builds in your world. It'll really make moving around in your world a lot more fun. Okay, so now you've checked utility off your list. You want to build something in your world, you can't think of what you want to build, but there's nothing you need. You've got your iron farm, you've got all your materials, you don't need anything. Well, the next tool that I like to use to help me decide what to build next in my world, and this one can be a little bit contentious depending on the circles of Minecraft you're in, but I like a little bit of lore. Just the tiniest nugget of lore. Sure, it doesn't, when I say lore, I don't mean you need a full-blown D&D campaign in your Minecraft world. All I mean is you need to have an idea of what you're building. So for me, this area was a pretty good example of I knew I wanted to build space themed, which already maybe space theme is enough of a lore for you to get some ideas and some juices flowing. But as you kind of refine and start building stuff and you start getting like, what should I build next to make this area work, right? Well, for me, I decided, well, what is a good excuse for a space build, or what would a space build need in a world? So I decided this area was a fuel mining depot. They're gonna go down to the mines, extract some hydrogen for some ice underneath the crust of the earth, and they're gonna ship it off to a space station to refuel some spaceships. And then I just started thinking about things they would need. I thought, well, the guy that lives here and runs the operation is gonna need a place to live. That's one of the more obvious ones. Everyone needs a build. And then I thought, well, rugged terrain, untraversed planet. He's gonna need a big, strong mech to move around in. How's he getting around the area? So I thought, well, if we're gonna do a space futuristic build, a robot could be fun. We built a cool little two-legged mech. And while they need to extract the hydrogen and they need to get to the ice to mine it, so they're gonna need a mine entrance. And then they're gonna need to get that ice off planet, or at least get the fuel off planet. So they're gonna need some kind of transportation cargo ship. And well, maybe between shipments, they need a place to store stuff. So we built them a nice big warehouse to store their stuff in between. And so on and so forth. And we just kept kind of expanding the area. On top of lore, I feel like sometimes for me, it can be helpful to have like a technology in mind, or at least like some kind of time period or era. So for me, this is like it's not medieval, but it's definitely like before modern technology. So everything in this area is kind of like stacked stones and like built up from the ground. and not really like machined or manicured in a way that looks like a modern building or a modern structure. It's just like, oh, we piled some stones by the side here, right? And the house is very like round and bouldered as if it's like stacked or carved out of rocks. And all the builds around here kind of follow that template, right? Obviously the build palette matters a lot, so it's a lot of stone and moss and woods. So even though this area doesn't really have a story necessarily, or like this doesn't really have lore in the sense that there's a purpose for these builds or a reason for them to exist, but they at least still have like a time period and like a general concept of like how they should be built. So even if the lore isn't a story about the builds, it can still kind of describe the area in a way. And that is a little bit more difficult to like define in your brain. So maybe it's not the best in terms of coming up with new ideas for builds. But as you work through an area, that's the kind of stuff you'll kind of like pick up on and learn and want to implement in your future builds in that area. All right. The next and final category of ways I decide what to build next in my world is, well, inspiration. This one's interesting because it can be either very different for every individual person or also very similar because, well, we all pull inspiration from different things. For me, this area is a little bit more vague, I would say. And I've got a really good example next, but first I'll talk about kind of how I was inspired for this area in particular. I used to have an Xbox 360 game called Call of Cthulhu. And I just loved like the idea of a Lovecraftian kind of spooky area. So I thought it would be cool to put a like almost horror themed build area in the world and have it kind of themed after a coastal, almost dark influenced town. And that again is a little less concrete than my next example, which I promise will be more very specific. And so I started building out this idea of a Lovecraftian harbor in our world. And I'm just going to start pulling elements from like H.P. Lovecraft and Call of Cthulhu and all those types of things. So there's going to be a tentacle monster probably at some point. We're building a big graveyard up here. Everything's going to be very dark and gothic and have a little bit of like mystical uneasiness to it. I want to match that like horror and that like feeling of uneasiness and like something is off in this area. And there's bits and pieces of like, it's not magic as much as it like uneasy mystical influence, I guess. But anyway, this one is a little more niche because I'm sure most people haven't actually played that random Call of Cthulhu game that I played back in the day. But I've got another example to show you of what I would consider an inspiration build. A slightly more obvious form of inspiration, and something that I think is really handy to turn to when you're just not sure what to build. Take inspiration from something you love outside of Minecraft. You could, I don't know, build Hogwarts in your world. Is there something that you love in pop culture or a place that you would love to exist inside of? Disclaimer, this is not my build. This is Plato's Storm, another member of Forevercraft. But I thought Hogwarts was a pretty good example of something that's built from inspiration. You have like a favorite video game level that you just wish you could exist in and walk around and live in more and expand. Sometimes when you've exhausted all of your ideas, it can be helpful to just take inspiration from the things that you like outside of Minecraft. Maybe you loved the old Halo games and you want to recreate Warsong Gulch. That'd be a sweet build. And then once you've built it, maybe you thought, well, you know, the towers are the places where the players play on either side of Warsong Gulch. What if those were big, awesome castles or something cool like that? So there you have it. 3 things that can help you decide what to build in your world. Utility. What do you need in your world? What is something that can make your world more entertaining or more exciting to live in? Or maybe it's just something that makes your day easier. Some kind of fuel source or some kind of transportation. The next thing is lore. Now this one can be contentious, like I said, but it doesn't have to be a full-blown story in your world. It just has to be something that can help you make little design choices throughout an area and help influence the builds. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, the people around here, you know, they're just always getting in my business. Very nosy neighbors here in the Lovecraftian harbor. But yeah, so you've built something useful in your world and you've built something based off of a lore that you've made. Maybe it's a story you came up with. Maybe it's a story you heard. And maybe it's not even really a story. It's just the loose idea of a build. And just brick by brick, expand off that idea. And finally, inspiration. What is something that inspires you and something you would want to recreate and maybe start adding your own little touches? Like the Warsong Gulch example. Say you build those castles on either side and then you think, well, what if there was a big earthquake and there's a giant cavern in the middle? Dig a giant gulf, put some lava in there, and all of a sudden you've got a pretty cool Minecraft arena, and that could be a cool thing to play with other people in your world. Maybe you love Harry Potter, and you've always wanted to build out Hogsmeade and put your own shops in there. Just take influence from things that inspire you and places you'd want to live in. And then you can put your own spin on it. What would happen if, I don't know, what if Voldemort took over the entire wizarding world? Would the builds be a lot darker? Would they be pointier? Would everything be dreary? And if all that fails and you can't think of what else to build in your world, well, you could binge watch some Minecraft videos. You might find some good ideas there. And well, I've got a lot more videos here on the channel if you know that was an idea of a thing you wanted to do. Hopefully you've got some ideas now of what you want to build in your Minecraft world. And I'd love to know what that thing is in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around. Have a good one.